Okay. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee.
Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, today's Our Lady's feast day, and she certainly was a paragon of all of these virtues and none of these vices. So we could call her a model penitent, I guess, if we want to think about that. She's always dressed in blue and white, right? So that's our colors. So we ask the lady's intercession here. Okay, so I got up to chapter 7 here, visiting the sick, burying the dead. And if we kind of look at all of these, section 22 about visiting people once a week who are sick, that one certainly would be, for which virtue would you say here would that one would work for? Or which vice would it combat?
Kindness, charity?
Yep. Kindness, charity, yeah, that would be in there. Also against sloth, because you would be visiting these persons once a week. I mean, if we can't visit, we could actually make a call or something like that. But you're taking time out of your day to do something for someone else, basically, in these areas.
And generosity.
And generosity, yes. So it works well. And then number 23, when we pray the 50 Psalms for someone who's passed away or when they've died, if you can go to the funeral, you go to the funeral. If you but many times we have people that we can't go to the funeral, like you couldn't go to Jan's funeral, for example, you people that were here. So we do the 50 Psalms. Even if we do go to the funeral, we still do the 50 Psalms. Again, that is against the city here, being diligent, trying to help the person, charity, even after they pass away. And the same goes with number 24, where we say the whole Psalter during a year for the people that passed away. So again, the whole Psalter. It takes about a couple hours if you do the whole Psalter all at once. I don't know if anybody tried that, but if you do it like a little bit every day, a psalm every day, you can get through it.
For deceased members,
yeah. So you can get through it faster that way.
That way you get through the whole 50 eventually.
Eventually, yeah. Before the year is over, you get through all the 150 Psalms, yeah. Okay, now if you look at the 25, 26, 27, all of those are talking about making trouble or causing disturbance, and so that would work with this anger sin, the sin of anger. So people don't get angry with you. And 25 also works making disposition of your goods, your last will and testament within 3 months after your profession. Anyway, that's so that your relatives don't get greedy.
Right.
So that helps them to avoid a sin by you making this will. And then with the other ones regarding peace. Then number 28 says, let each member accept and faithfully exercise the ministry of the offices imposed on him, although anyone may retire from this office after a year. So I don't know what your thoughts would be on that, but as I was thinking about this virtue, I thought, well, we do need people to minister to us, but this would, I think, would work with number 1 with pride, because you have to humbly accept the office that's imposed on you. So it wasn't even like a popularity contest or anything. Like maybe your visitor would impose the office on you and choose you to be the minister or something. So, and then you can't really pride yourself on it because you weren't voted in by everybody or whatever.
Seeking it,
yeah, you weren't seeking it. Number 29, it says when you wanted to enter the brothers and sisters of penance, they had to restore what belongs to others, which is against greed. They had to give back if they had stuff that wasn't theirs. And then they were vested according to the prescribed way, which was the clothing element, which means that they would give up all their fancy stuff and so on, and then pay up their debts, which we already talked about, debts being against greed and not incurring more debts and so forth. So that's that kind of gets us close to the very end here of the rule. And then it's talking here that if it's a heretic, number 32, number 33, the women have to have their husband's consent to enter. That would begin to keep peace in the family, so he would not get angry or anything, to be at peace with all. And if they were incorrigible, they were going to be expelled, because we weren't going to have somebody in this group that was creating problems, creating anger, wrath, whatever. We want to live in peace. That was a big thing with Francis, as you know, about peace and brotherhood and so forth. Then this also, the chapter 8 about correction, dispensation, and officers talks about exposing public faults of the brothers and sisters, to, in other words, not putting up with any of these sins that might be in the brotherhood, or the, again, to try to keep peace, and working against anything that would be sinful there. Again, scandal, that would be, again, whatever the scandal would be. It could be any of these sins. We wouldn't know what it would be. But we don't want it in this group, because people are supposed to be exercising these virtues, not those vices. Then we have the officers who are supposed just working with what they're supposed to be in their obligations. That would be a diligence of prescription there. And in the above mentioned points, no one is obligated under guilt but under penalty, which means that they would be given a penalty to do if they were, say they fell into some infraction of this rule or whatever. But if they didn't complete the penalty, whatever it would be, then they would be guilty and could be considered to be contumacious, and they could be expelled if they didn't do whatever penalty was imposed on them by their visitor or their minister or whatever. So that kind of ends that, except for the clothing part, which I want to spend more time on. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions about this last part of this? Insights? Okay. Okay, so I want to go over the clothing part. This is the first part of the rule, and I think it's interesting that it is the first part, but probably because at that time the classes were very distinguished by their clothing and by what they wore. So as you know, the kings and queens, they were really dressed to the hilt. And the nobles also were very well dressed with imported fabrics and brocades and, you know, silks and gems and all kinds of stuff. And then you get down to the lower class people that were getting the cast-offs from the noble class, because just like we do today, we give our stuff to the St. Vincent de Paul or something. Well, they would give their cast-offs to the poor, but of course, I mean, it might be that same nice brocade dress that the lady had, you know, when it was new, but now it's going to be stained, and the brocade might be torn off, and I mean, you could tell it wasn't what it used to be. Let's put it that way. I think that's why this section is first, because people were so distinguishable by their clothing, whereas right now you're not as distinguished by your clothing. Even people that have a lot of money go around in jeans. Of course, they're very expensive jeans, but you know, but they're still jeans. So if you had all these people in the room, you might not be able to tell, oh, that person over there makes $1 million a year. You might not be able to tell that. In those days, you could.
Yeah.
So our call was to live the rule as close as possible to its original intent, which means that we wanted to parallel the clothing colors that they had, because the first provision says, it says men here, but women were also engaged in this, but the men belonging to this brotherhood shall dress in humble, undyed cloth. So undyed cloth, well, what was that like back in 1221? Well, that would be any of the neutral colors, because it depends on what the cloth was. If it was made out of cotton, or, which they didn't have over there, but like flax, or if it was a wool, or if it was some kind of an animal skin or something. I mean, it would depend on what that cloth was made out of, but it certainly would have been purple. That was the dye, you know. Wouldn't have been green. So, but then it talks about the price here, the price of which is not to exceed a ravenna soldi and L, which is not, that's not that was not a real cheap price. It wasn't like, 10 cents or something. I mean, it was, you could get a decent piece of clothing for that price. But now, you wouldn't buy those brocade fabrics for that price.
Right.
But you could buy something decent. But it does have in here, unless for evident and necessary cause, a temporary dispensation is given. So a king or queen or a noble or something, if they were going to a coronation, they could maybe get a little dispensation on that because it was a very special event. Or installation of a bishop or something, like these noble classes would, get all dressed up. So you could get a little bit of a dispensation, but you wouldn't probably still dress to the hilt, even if you were a penitent. You would try to keep it down a little bit. And the thinnest and cloth are in the said price, and so forth. And it tells you here, so this first one, I think it's actually first number one here. I think that, to me, that talks about pride, because the expensiveness of your clothes and what they look like was a matter of pride, because people would notice in those days. Mm-hmm. And so this was working against that, to making you humble. It says humble undyed cloth. But then it also, I think, works against greed, because, if you want to have the best of everything, the nicest of everything, the most flashy of everything, and so on, this is working against greed here. But it's also working, this whole provision also works against vanity. Now, vanity is not on here. But to me, I think vanity goes with envy, because why are we vain? It's because we're envying what somebody else has, and we want to have it too. So because we are vain, we are envious. If we're not vain, we're not going to be envious. In other words, if I don't want something that somebody else has, if I don't think I should have it for some reason because I want to make me look good physically, or look good spiritually, or just economically, or something. If you think about things people envy in other people, look good scholastically because they envy grades, whatever it is. We want what somebody else has to make us look good. That's why we want it. So the opposite of that is kindness or charity. In other words, being grateful for someone else's good things and us not worrying that we don't have them, So I think that these provisions here work against this provision also, against envy, so that people aren't going to be envying us. And we don't envy other people because we can't have what they want, what they have anyway. So we're just not going to envy it. So, I can't envy somebody in those brocade dresses because it's not in my rule here. I'm not going to have them anyway. So why should I envy somebody for it? And I don't really think any of the penitents saying, oh, well, now I don't have a blue shirt like she has. Why does she have it and I don't have it? You can't envy something that's pretty common and basic. So I think that's what that works toward. And then if you look at number 3, about how the women are supposed to dress. Now these also work with modesty as well. Number 2, if you look at number 2 first, they wear their outer garments and furred coats without open throat. Because if you're open-throated was not modest in those days.
No.
Sewed shut or uncut, but certainly laced up. No, not open as secular people wear them, and they shall wear their sleeves closed. Because you weren't supposed to see your wrist even in those days. Like if you had something with one of those long, those like big sleeves, when you'd lift your arm up, you'd see your wrist. That was immodest in those days. So this is really talking about modesty, which is really working against lusting against people, creating them to have unchaste thoughts and so forth. That's what that's working toward. So when we pick our clothing, it should be modest. Modest according to our current standards of what modesty is. So one of our earlier visitors gave the best definition of modesty. Modest clothing is meant to conceal, not reveal. Mm-hmm. If you just follow that, you got it. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to worry about the length of your dress and all that. Should you have short sleeves, long? Meant to conceal, not to reveal. I think that's the best definition. So then it talks about the women, what they're supposed to wear. And they're talking about it talks again about humble quality, wear an outer garment of the same price and humble quality, humble again, or at least with an outer cloak and so on. But it says, or an ample linen gown. Ample means large enough. not one of these real tight things that shows everything. So it was an ample linen gown without gathers. Now gathers, if you have gathers, it's tightening it more around your, your waist or your bosom, or if you have gathers, that's tightening it up. This is supposed to be an ample gown, so that means it's like a long tunic gown or something. It's not showing your figure, basically. It's concealing that, kind of like a nun's habit or something. And then it tells you the price, not to be too expensive. You can get a little bit of a dispensation depending upon the estate of the person. So wealthier people might wear something a little bit better looking, whatever, but not so flashy and outstanding. But they're not supposed to wear silken or dyed veils and ribbons. So the ribbons and veils, they were like adornments. And it's talking about getting rid of vain adornments down here in the next one, number 4. There, it says, other vain adornments they shall lay aside at the bidding of the visitor. So that means any type of jewelry, ribbons, brocades, things like that. We can apply that to today with any kind of adornments that people use. They're supposed to not be using those. Now, we have in our rule that we're supposed to wear a cross or crucifix to show that we are Christian, so people know that we are following Christ. And so that's okay. If you have pierced ears, you can wear, little simple earrings, to keep the holes from getting closed, because you may want to put earrings in later, your daughter gets married or something. You may want to have something a little nicer. So you can do that so your holes don't get closed and that sort of thing. Your wedding band, you can wear your wedding ring. You can wear a watch. I don't know if people use watches anymore, but things like that are okay. But like flashy kind of jewelry, other kinds of extra jewelry, bracelets, that kind of stuff, we're not supposed to be using. Now people ask me in here, what about hair dyes? I said, well, this rule doesn't say anything about hair dyes. No, it doesn't say anything about hair dye. But it does say in our constitutions that if you wear makeup or something, it shouldn't call attention to you. So you shouldn't have makeup that people say, oh, she's wearing, they can tell you're wearing eyeshadow, they can tell you're wearing mascara or like any type of makeup. So that would go for anything like that, that people can tell somebody's made up, shall we say, whatever that would go for.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, the idea isn't to be humble, not to call attention to yourself. And the last one says they are not to go to unseemly parties or shows or dances. Well, that doesn't mean we can't go to parties, shows, or dances. It's saying unseemly parties, shows, or dances. They shall not donate to actors and shall forbid their household to donate. On those days, all these plays and everything were very irreligious, sexy. They were not really morally good things to be watching. So the penitents are not supposed to go to those or to donate to those actors, and they were not going to do anything that was against modesty here. So that would be this one here about the lust element. Try not to do anything that's going to cause you to lust or cause other people to lust. So you just avoid those things. Now, does anybody have any questions on this? Questions, thoughts, whatever.
Actually,
Yeah.
yes. I do have one question vis-a-vis going to theaters and acting.
Yeah.
My wife and I went to a Shakespeare production a few weeks ago, and one of the actors was obviously a trans person.
Oh, yeah.
She had her breast removed, and the scars from the surgery were plainly visible because her costume consisted of a vest, because she was presenting
as a man. Yeah,
even
yeah.
though she was very obviously, by the shape of her face, her hips, her voice,
Yeah.
etc., a woman.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where the matter of the play itself was fine. It was
Right.
sibylline by Shakespeare, so
Yeah.
enjoyable, and hosted by the Catholic University we had both
Oh, dear.
alumni of. But
you wouldn't know who's going to be acting those parts.
We
No,
don't know
no.
who the players are. For the Shakespeare Festival itself is separate from the university, so that's a different thing. But it's kind of like at that point in supporting the arts by our presence, are we also, to what extent are we supporting many of the attitudes held by those promoting the arts? And that's kind of wondering, is there just like a fine line there, kind of?
Well, I don't know, I'd have to ask
Yeah.
Father about that, but I would say that when you go, like, if you're going to a Shakespeare play, you're going to see the play.
Yeah.
You're not trying to support, now if they say it's a play put on by a certain group that has a certain agenda,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, and that's in the publicity that you're gonna go to this type, well, then you would avoid that, you know. But just something like this, I mean, you're kind of caught off guard with that. You wouldn't have suspected something
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah, it was quite surprising.
Yeah, yeah. So the question is why these people think that they look like guys when obviously they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, or vice versa. It's even vice versa is
Oh, yeah.
even more interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but we have to pray for those people. But I don't think there was anything. I mean, you didn't know that that was going to be part of this, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sensibilities have changed over time in some ways because, I mean, I still remember growing up that you could always tell a Catholic in a movie theater because they genuflected before they got into the scene. And I would say this about, I still remember my dad taking us to movies, and my father would literally get up and walk out
Yeah.
on if there were like salacious scenes
Yeah.
things that were scandalous. And I still remember, and to this day, it taught us a lesson, you know. And I even like today, if I'm just watching a movie and something comes across the screen, that I think about that, and I just think, turn it off, you know,
Turn it
or
off,
whatever. I mean, now when Shakespeare was alive, women were not allowed to be in plays.
Right.
So they had men in drag
Right.
as part of a standard procedure because women
Yeah.
were forbidden from
To be in
those
plays, right.
roles. Okay. But now it's something totally different.
Yeah.
It's a scandalous mocking of God, really is what it is. Because now, what do? I would say if you have small children with you, get up and walk out. That's what I would do. I mean, I don't even know if we should be there ourselves. If you're in a theater and there's something horribly scandalous going on
Right.
the stage. I remember I was a high school chaplain in a diocese in Pennsylvania for a while, and the local Catholic high school had picked as its senior play. It was called Once Upon a Mattress, and it was Carol Burnett starred in it on Broadway back then. But it was part of those sexual, like Old Calcutta and all that kind of stuff that was going on in New York. And it was part of that genre. Well, you know, Bishop Rhodes was our bishop over there at the time. And he had asked me to be the chaplain for that high school. And I confronted him about it. I have to say, embarrassingly, I didn't even know about it. But at our parish, the teachers in the grade school approached me, and because they brought it to me, because some of their kids were in it up at the high school. And there was a tradition of taking the children from the grammar schools to the high school, because the high school had the middle school and the high school in the same building. So they were trying to get enrollment, so they would get the kids to come from the parish, you know, the area Catholic grade schools to the senior play at the high school. And the teachers came to me at the parish and said, Father, we don't want to go over there because last year we took them, and they said they described the play the previous year as a pole dance without the poles. Okay, and they had so many letters from the parents when they brought the kids home. They had so many letters like, "What the heck did you take my kid to see at that high school?" Like, we do not want to go through that again, and we know what they're doing over there with this year. And so I didn't know anything about it, and then I looked into it, and I was horrified by the libretto and all this kind of stuff, and I thought, my gosh, you know, like you couldn't find something else to do for a Catholic high school.
Yeah.
And because the plot was that the princess and the P, right? But the plot was that the princess was pregnant out of wedlock, and I guess the moral of the story was it's okay to be pregnant out of wedlock.
That's not the story that they had at our high school, because Sister Veronica was a princess.
Okay.
She wasn't pregnant out of wedlock. Maybe she
Okay.
had them take that out. I don't know, but that was not in the.
This is the Once Upon a Mattress?
Yeah, Once Upon a Mattress.
Yeah, I was gonna say that
Yeah.
maybe a different version.
They might have because
Maybe they added.
They might have added that, yeah, because the king in that one is also supposed to be like a pervert. The
Yes.
king, yeah.
Yeah,
And-
so I went to this thing at the high school, and there's this scene where they have this kid dressed up like an older man making sexual innuendos toward a younger male.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
stage.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
and like, in this day and age, like in the church, are you kidding me?
Wow.
Oh my gosh! And I was sweating. I was so bored. And these girls are up there talking about like with these medieval like dresses and their breasts popping out like this, and they're acting real campy up on the stage, and I'm like,
Man. Wow, just the costumes.
oh my
alone.
gosh!
Yeah, you can
And
do all
so
of that.
so I confronted them. They didn't like it, but I confronted them about it, and. And I went because the band director is the one who picked it, and I said, I think we certainly have to push back on that kind of stuff. Those like you couldn't have found something more decent to put on.
Right.
Like if even Bishop Rhodes said up at the public high school in Harrisburg, they were doing Sound of Music, and he goes, the public high school, and we're doing Once Upon a Mattress.
That was totally
Oh,
flipped.
my goodness. Right. And so, again, I do think, sensibilities have changed, but I think, this, like what you're trying to do here with the confraternity is that, you're trying to not numb people's sensibilities, but you're trying to refine people's sensibilities.
Right.
It's not about being prudish or like I'm better than thou, or that I, can't have a good time or anything like that. But when I think that and certainly if you're a parent and you're taking your family to a public event, even if you didn't know what was going to go on, like I said, I still remember my father getting us up and walking out of a theater, as a kid when there were like unnecessary salacious scenes going on in the theater. And I know it's so prevalent today, and it's hard to say. You open up something on the internet, you're going to get all kinds of nonsense. But it just has to do with our ability to, push back on a lot of that stuff. I guess you have to make prudential decisions about that. But I certainly don't think there was any moral fault in the fact that you were surprised by it when you go.
Yeah.
But when it's displayed in front of you, you have to make a decision. And I don't know, that it happens so often now. I guess,
Wouldn't be going to anything.
on some level, I don't know, but they keep pushing this back. Why did we have this crazy display at the Paris Olympics?
Oh, yeah.
Because sensibilities, they've just weakened people's sensibilities to this kind of salacious stuff over the years. And I think part of what good faithful Christians do is you have to push back on that. Like Bishop Barron, I'm going to read when I have my little talk about what Bishop Barron had to say about that. But they say, well, if it offended anybody, we're really, really sorry.
Well, that's nice.
Well,
we're going to say that too now.
Christians were offended, like as Bishop Barron said, Christians were offended because it was intended to be offensive.
That's right. It worked.
Exactly.
And when women are mocked by men dressing up as them and just acting, campy and stuff like that, again, I just think you have to make a decision, but I just get up and walk out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to sit there and watch that.
No, why should you? Yeah.
So I would just get up and go. That would be my own thing, But you have to it depends a little bit the context. Like if you're there with friends or extended relatives, you make more of a scene of it. If it's just like a momentary thing, it's like, oh, geez, and you can maybe use it as a teaching moment later. But if there's you have to judge it. If it's if it goes on and on and on, I would just get up and go. I guess that's my own temperament toward it.
I have a related question.
Yeah.
Kristen and I found ourselves in a weird situation. We went to our school's fundraiser at the gala. And a lot of the women there were dressed for a night out, not at a church-related function. There was a half miniskirt, half dress where you could see the ladies' pelvis photos.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, my.
Like there were more body parts on display there. And this
Wow.
is prominent family members who donate a lot of money. and our priest was there, and I don't know what he thought about it, and I don't think he would ever say out loud if he was bothered about this. But
Yeah.
we've gone to 2 of these, and it's happened at both of them. They're dressed up more like they were for sale than.
Right. And a lot of them, their sensibilities are so known, they don't realize how bad they look.
Yeah.
They don't, to them, this is how you dress.
It's obviously expensive clothing they're wearing. They spend a lot on a little
Oh,
bit of
yeah,
fabric.
yeah.
Well, my parish in Pennsylvania, Bishop Road, we had a big suburban parish, and I remember I was back at the church with one of our, more, womanly homeschool moms, and I was standing in the back, and there was this young girl, maybe like 13 or 14 years old, in the pew with her family, and she had on flip-flops, a micro mini skirt, and a halter top.
Oh, wow.
At Mass.
At Mass.
At Mass.
Oh.
And I'm like, her father's in there. I'm like, I don't know where that girl's mother, let alone her father. I wouldn't let that child go to the beach dressed like that, But what do you do? So here's what I would say, and I said a little bit of it earlier. You don't give unsolicited moral guidance to adults.
Yeah,
Right, or to minors that you have no jurisdiction over.
right.
So if people ask you, then you try to give it in a charitable and intelligent way. Right, as St. Paul says, have a reason for your hope. So but you don't give unsolicited advice to people that are dressed improperly, acting improperly, whatever. But I mean, the old thing with the Holy Name Society is they would make a little aspiration of reparation, when they see something, and you can. It's a teaching moment, maybe for like your girls. If they see it, like they say, well, why can't I dress like that, or why can't I wear something like that? And I mean, I think in your family, this is not going to be an issue because you're giving good instruction and education to your kids. So likelihood is that's not going to be an issue for them right now. Wait till they're teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think if somebody lives in your house, you have a moral culpability related to them if it's your house. But if they're not, there's not much you can do, and you see it around us all the time. I mean, you see a lot of immodesty in the culture. And so just like what you're talking about, like with the way you dress as members of the confraternity, you're giving a witness. You're giving and also just in the way you speak and the way you interact with the people. And if somebody like that would come to you for advice, have something to say that is, not "I told you so," or something that intelligently addresses the issue of why you dress modestly, and you just develop that from a heart of charity. But yeah, I mean, the culture around us is really off the hook, and even within the church, I mean, we'd have people come up onto men and women, not just women, but men and women, come into church and even go up onto the altar to serve in various capacities when I was at St. Joe's. And you're looking at me like, really?
Right.
Like you looked at your whole wardrobe this morning, and you thought that was a good choice.
There was one lecturer in
Right.
Eco in Nashville.
Yeah.
She would walk down the aisle. She was going on a catwalk with stilettos.
Right.
And one night, one of the Vanderbilt students, Wolf was a letter. And that was wrong, but not wrong.
Did you get the
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was taken as a compliment.
Well,
Yeah.
let me give you another example. My father worked with Goodwill for a number of years and is a job trainer. And he had this kid with him that he was trying to get him to get into the workforce. And he had tattoos everywhere and piercings, and his mouth, the F word was every other word coming out of his mouth. Okay? And nobody wanted to work with him. And my father sort of mentored him and took him, onto his job site and taught him like what are the expectations of your employer, and like they put him in the stockroom because they didn't want him exposed to the public with that mouth. So Dad worked with him back there, and and tried to help him understand like how you dress when you come to work and all that kind of stuff. He used that language with my father one time, right? And it's not that my father ever hit him, but he didn't have a father,
No.
right? He was raised without a father, but Dad was after a few months working with my father, he was like a puppy dog. My dad, he would just follow my dad around like a puppy, because Dad was a football coach. He knew how to mentor people, he knew how to work with people, and he just never had somebody who loved him enough to guide him.
Yeah.
Right? And, so there's a lot of that in the
That's the
culture
key,
too.
isn't
So rather than us just becoming very judgmental or like upset about all these, it's also part of us to understand that a lot of these younger people, they haven't had the guidance, they haven't had the mentoring or the example, or they've had the opposite in many cases from their own experience of family and what's up. So, part of this too, part of, growing as a Christian is growing in charity and being gracious, not necessarily becoming judgmental of people who visibly fall short and are easily to judge by the externals. There's saying you could judge a book by its cover, but the thing is, you don't always know what's inside that book. Because on the outside they might seem very jaded and very worldly, but inside it's just a lost sheep, right? And they just need some guidance, some care, some love, and some real attention. And there's just been such a lack of nurturing and holy families that a lot of these kids have never experienced it. So it's a mix of things. But I'd say I'd rather take the approach of presuming the best and just offering, a generous and loving example to people who, are, visibly kind of scandalous or, whatever, because you don't really know what their past has been. That's or true. Who they are. So,
yeah. Good.
So anyway, just.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, now we're going to do a little exercise, shall we say. All right. I'm not sure what's in. Let me look here. Let's see. Let's start with this bag. Okay. I went to the thrift store, and it took me less than 10 minutes to buy these things. I'm going to give them back to the thrift store. Okay. Does this fit our rule? Ignore what it says. Does this fit our rule?
No,
No. Why not?
wrong color.
All right. Wrong color. Something else.
Writing?
Writing, yes. Not supposed to have writing on it.
Right.
So it should just be a plain T-shirt in our colors, all right? So this does not fit our rule. I'm going to put them under here after a minute. All right, let's look at this one. How about this one?
Yeah, that looks all right.
It could.
Is it the pattern too much, or is it all right?
Well, this is one of those ones that, you see, if you just asked the question, is it the pattern or is it all right? My little mantra is, when in doubt, throw it out. Yeah. So, I don't mean throw it out. I mean give it back to the thrift store.
Another
See,
point.
because of the pattern here, we're not supposed to have patterns, and this definitely has a pattern.
Yeah.
And of course, it could be immodest also because you wear it. If you wear it, you're seeing through it. So I would say, I would not wear this one.
Right.
I would say, just give it back to the thrift store. When in doubt, throw it out. Okay. How about this one? This is the right color.
Oh my gosh,
Oh, yeah.
that's awful.
Completely okay.
This doesn't fit the modesty one, does it?
Modesty, no.
Okay, so all right. So this is a little too expensive.
Depends
This
on how much it costs.
poses a lot more than the original. Well, let me tell you what.
Shirt on your own.
It's, okay.
I don't know if this. I must have taken the cost off. I don't see the cost on here. Yeah. Well, this wasn't meant to. This is one of those drop sleeve things. So. I guess you could put a shirt on it, but again, I would follow the when in doubt, throw it out thing.
Lace on it, so.
Huh?
The lace.
The lace is a little flashy, yeah. So, okay. Okay, that's all in that one. Let me just put my bag there. Okay.
Today's lingerie.
I have these sort of divided up, so I just want to, okay, here's some more. Okay. Now, these are the colors of our rule, right? Colors of the rule. Yes or no?
It's more of a gray, well, it's iffy.
I'd say no.
It's got two colors to
You
it.
could call it a gray, but it's got a blocking.
It's got two colors, yeah, and it's got a pattern. I mean, it's not a pattern, but I mean, it's not solid. It's not solid. We're supposed to have solid colors of the rule. This is not a solid color. It's not black, and it's not white, and it's not gray. It's like a mix.
It's a mix.
So,
Right.
no. How about this one? I think you'll guess this one easily because it's the same. This is like a tweed or something. Tweeds generally do not work because, again, of the pattern. Not sure even how this goes. It's got a belt to it.
Figure out which way
Yeah,
this is
it's got.
going.
It's,
Oh, there it is.
if it is like this, yeah, this is. It's okay. So that would be a no because of the pattern.
What about the belt?
Well, the belt is the right color. It's, I don't know. I mean, that's a judgment call. I mean, it could be a lot worse than this. You know, I mean, it could be like flashier or something. This is pretty subdued belt. If you needed to wear a belt,
So a belt in of itself is not,
a belt in of itself should follow the rule about trying to not be flashy and just kind of.
But that's a decorative belt.
But this is a decorative belt. Well, I don't know. Maybe this is really wide.
part of the,
No, that's a
But that's
decorative
part of this style of this particular
Yeah.
outfit.
Well, it's
so-
meant to be decorative.
I mean, they used to wear belts. The penitents wore belts, and this is a
It's to cinch in your waist so you look
yeah,
more attractive.
attractive, right? That's what that
It's
is.
like the gathers.
That's like the gathers. Yeah. Well, if you probably that for that reason, yeah, a belt like because this is not to hold your pants up.
No.
You're right about that. So yeah. So that would be to accentuate your waist. Yeah. So I don't use belts, so I don't really think much about them. But that's a good point. Yeah. So probably we should refrain from those. Okay. So let me put this one so I can put up there. Okay. I do have a pattern to my madness here. I just have to get it straightened out. Oh, here's another one.
Oh, Lord.
That's our colors, right? That's our colors. What's wrong with that?
No, it's stripes and it's lace and it's see-through.
And it's sheer. There's a whole bunch of things wrong with this one. But it does have our colors, but it's got the pattern. It's got, Okay. No.
I definitely would not give that to Jim.
No, my husband wouldn't wear it because it doesn't have sleeves, Father. I'm teasing Jim about the sleeves. How about this one? This is the colors of the rules. Is much more modest type of.
It's still a pattern.
Still a pattern. That's
All
right.
over it.
Okay. So even if the pattern is in our colors, we can't use it. Okay. All right. All right. Now we're going to go into socks.
Oh, my.
No, because it's our colors, but it's got the pattern, right? Because you still can't see these. The rule says if you can't see them, then it doesn't matter.
You're going to be able to see them.
But you can see my socks here.
Yeah.
So yeah, so these you can't work. Now this is a little bit different because this is a sock, but this is not a sock you wear in a shoe. This is a
It's a slippers.
slipper sock. So now when you wear things for bedtime, I mean, who's going to see you, right? So it's a little bit different for bedtime. I might try to get stuff that fits our rule, but I mean, you wouldn't go outside wearing these in the general public, I hope. So anyhow, this you probably, I probably wouldn't pick this one because I would probably pick one that's either white or blue or probably gray or something for me. But, I think this would probably be okay because of where you wear it.
Where you wear it,
Yeah, and I didn't bring any unmentionables because those can be Mickey Mouse if you want them to be, but I didn't want to hold them up here, all right? Because nobody sees those but you. I could have bought them though, but I didn't. All right. Okay, now I'm going to talk about purses because it does talk about carry bags.
That one, no.
This one, no, even though it's in the colors of the rule because of the pattern. This one,
Looks okay.
yeah.
This one's okay. It's got a little white trim, but that's just I wouldn't worry about that particularly. This is pretty much okay, all right? Okay. Now we'll get into ties. Okay. Now remember, men's ties, it says in our constitutions, can be any color. Why does it say that? It's very hard to find a plain black tie or a plain brown tie or a
Yes, it
plain
is.
white tie.
Yeah.
You'll get a white tie if you go with a tuxedo or something. It's hard. So I picked these ties, and tell me which ones. It says something with small patterns that's not flashy is okay. Would this be okay? What do you think?
I would say,
That
yeah.
would be all right.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that would probably be all right.
It's somebody's school time.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. Now, if you don't want red, you pick another color. But I mean, it's kind of, it's not real
It's not
flashy.
flashy red.
Yeah. Now, that's as opposed to this one, which is, this one is more flashy.
Yeah.
Okay, now, flashy obviously is an opinion.
Yeah.
What I consider flashy might not be what you consider flashy. But I would say, look at the general opinion of flashy. I think if you compare these two, you can tell which one is more flashy.
No, that one.
This one is, yeah.
So the power tie would be out of that.
This one here, I think would be, this is more flashy to me than this one. It's like a small stripe or something. You can even find these with smaller stripes. That would be okay. Put them under here. Now see, this one is a very small print. But that one should be okay. That's a small, that's not flashy. Somebody look at that, they don't like, it's not like a Mickey Mouse on the front here or something, you know what I mean? But this one that I dropped on the floor here,
Whoa.
that one is more flashy, all right? That one we would.
Look good with the
Are you coveting this bed? Father wants this one.
You
Okay.
tie it around your head, you don't.
Sure,
Let me see here.
You have it.
there you go.
Okay, this is the last piece I have. What about this one?
Is that pajamas?
Indoor or outdoor pajamas?
You're not going out in pajamas, I hope.
Well, some people go out in
Some people
pajamas.
do, yeah.
So I would say, if you're going to wear these outside, no. If you're going to
You
wear
got
these to bed,
problems.
it's okay.
Well,
So-
when the rule was written, there weren't pajamas.
There weren't pajamas. That's right, there weren't pajamas. So, I didn't even know there were indoor or outdoor pajamas. I just thought there were people wearing indoor pajamas out. I don't know. I mean, I'm just out of
Well,
pajama loop.
people wear pajamas. That's
But if you wear
weird.
pajamas, it's, you know, if you're only wearing them to bed, nobody sees you in them, it doesn't matter. If you're going to wear these outside, no.
As long as it
I made Lou Samuels crack up one time
Uh-huh.
because I told her I had a
Yes.
floor at night now.
Okay. Number one, a T-shirt, say a T-shirt with the religious theme? No. Okay.
No,
so
because we don't want to call, the
wearing
approach point is not to call attention to yourself.
Right.
So if you're wearing a religious shirt, it calls attention to you.
t-shirt. Okay.
Now, if you want to do something with religious things, I would say hand out some little cards or prayer cards or, you know, cards that say Jesus loves you or something like that, but not wear it on yourself.
Can't wear it.
Yeah.
Same thing with a tie.
The same thing with a
Like,
tie.
yeah.
Yeah, if you have a tie like Noah's Ark or some kind of. Now, they do make some ties. Some ties can have very small religious emblems, like we have one that we sell in the shop that has very small San Damiano crosses on it. That's not flashy. But then sometimes you see other ones that has like St. Michael the Archangel with, you know,
Yeah,
then
it's
it's
a
like,
big- yeah.
yeah, that's a little bit different.
Okay. And what about like a top or a dress that has pleats? Like some of them are very plain,
Mhm.
but they have little tiny pleats, maybe to make it roomier
Yeah.
in general. Is that okay?
I would say it's okay if it's modest.
Okay.
I mean, if it's
Well,
not
yeah,
like,
I
if
think-
it's not tight, you know, like, but the pleats I don't think makes a difference. So,
All right, okay,
yeah, I think that would be all right. I wouldn't worry, go that picky about it.
okay.
No. Now, the last thing I have here are these bags, because we do have a thing in the rule about getting, in the constitutions, about getting bags that are in the colors of the rule if possible. Now, it's hard. Let me show you all these bags again. This one doesn't fit the rule because it has writing on it.
Yeah.
All right? This one doesn't has writing and is green. This one is the right color, but it's got writing on it.
It's advertising color.
This one is blue and white, so this is not a solid.
Now, I never thought about bags as being part of your apparel.
Well, they're not, but it does mention
mean-
it, because I'm calling attention to the bags. I just want to make a point here.
Well,
Okay, so this one has the colors of the rule except for the yellow, but it's got a pattern.
Yeah.
And this one, now, all those bags would not actually, if you wanted to be really strict and like, those do not fit the rule.
Yeah.
But I use them all.
yeah.
Now this one I have, but I bought this. I had to go on the internet and find a plain bag
Yeah.
that doesn't have anything on it. And I don't think we would be required to do that. The thing is, if you're going to buy,
don't think so.
if you're going to buy a bag or you're going to buy a suitcase or something, like try to buy something that's more subdued and not, you know, like a bright purple with big pink flowers on it or something. Like try to buy something more subdued. But like these bags that you get from the grocery store, these free bags that you get from these places, I mean, I think it's perfectly
I have
okay
a
to use
bag.
it.
Is my bag okay?
Yeah, well, see, I mean, that's what I mean. See, your bag, it's,
I always use this for choir.
yeah.
It was my choir
I
bag
mean,
for my
it
music.
doesn't, we said if possible. I mean, I think that's okay, because it's just, what are you going to do? You can't get a lot, you'd have to go and buy a special black bag
Somebody gave me
with
this.
nothing on it. I mean, and then spending money. So, you know, there's no need to have to spend money on something like that.
I didn't spend money on that, it was a gift.
It was a gift. Well, there you go. So, anyways, anybody have any questions or anything?
Would this flannel be a pattern?
That vinyl?
Flannel?
I can't see it from
Flannel.
Well, she can't tell from there.
If I can't tell from there, it's not a pattern. It can't be very much of a pattern. Oh, no, no, that's
Slightly
a,
herringbone.
no, that's okay. It's still a solid color. That's not a real noticeable pattern. If the stripes in it were white or something, then it would be noticeable, yeah. No, I think that's okay.
What about hairstyle?
You know, maybe the
Hairstyle.
CFP should start a line
What
of,
about
you know,
hairstyles?
clothing
Hairstyles.
and.
Doesn't say anything about hairstyles.
How about shoes?
Well, shoes should be in the color of the rule. I mean, I wouldn't wear pink shoes or anything. Green shoes, whatever. I think everybody here pretty much has pink. But now sometimes with sneakers or something, it's hard to get them in the, see, yours are very close. He's got a red tongue on it. It's hard to get them exactly. You have to try.
We had to order all black ones from Amazon.
Yeah, you can get them, but you have to almost order them if you're gonna get sneakers or something.
Some of the, especially the flat shoes, some of them have like a buckle on them, like it's a decorative buckle, but they're small. But it's hard to find
Yeah.
anything that doesn't have a little bit of something on them.
Yeah, I think you
It's hard,
can,
especially for women's shoes, to find something
Yeah.
that's that bling.
yeah. Again, we don't know anything about the shoes in the rule, but I mean, I would say just try to follow the colors of the rule and try to get something that's not flashy or something. Like, you know, there's an obvious difference between the gold glitter pumps or something and a black one with a little button right here. You know what I mean? There's a difference in that.
Yeah.
You're gonna see the gold glittery ones
Did
a
the
lot.
original Puritans wear shoes, or did they follow Francis's example in that?
They probably wore boots and shoes, maybe sandals or something. But if you're working in the fields, you were going to be wearing boots. So, but then they didn't, you know, they were utilitarian then. I think it was the wealthy people maybe that may have done things that were not quite so utilitarian, but
Well, I used to work for EDS for a while, and they actually brought in a fella that wrote a book that was popular for a while called Dress for Success.
yeah.
And this was like 30 years ago. so-
Yeah, I remember that book.
At the time. Now, they had very strict dress codes
Yeah.
for their staff, and it was basically solids,
Mhm.
much like what you're saying, but it was solid blues, solid gray, no browns,
Oh, yeah, they don't
no
brown.
browns.
No
This-
brown.
this-
Yeah.
this
For
is
business, they say
for
browns
business.
is not good for business.
They said, no brown shoes. you
Yep,
know,
yep, the brown,
No
yeah.
wingtips.
Yeah,
All your shoes have to be tie shoes, low cut, you know, no high.
no high boots.
tops. They went down to the stitching.
Mhm.
You know, your shirts, you couldn't have any short sleeves. It's all
Right, all long
long sleeves,
sleeves.
collar, button-down collars. The ties were much like what you're saying, you know, you couldn't have.
Conservative type of tie.
Yeah, no flashy.
Yeah.
In the hairstyles, you had to have a low groomed cut, you know, no beards, you know. They even got down to tweezers for your nose.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so that, yeah, they
No, we
were
always
really
have.
meticulous about it.
They're worse than we are.
Not really. I mean, you know, but it was, the intent was that they were stressing professionalism.
Right.
And that when you're there for a business purpose, and everything else goes by the boards, and just focused on
Right.
You know, and I always thought that was, you know, it presented well to
Yeah.
customers, and
Sure.
you know, it was valuable.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of thing.
You know, I just say you all know my dad, and most of you know my father. And when he was young, he was very handsome, and he lived in England. He worked for naval intelligence, and he liked nice things and nice clothes and all this kind of stuff. And I remember as a kid, him quoting scripture to me and saying, you know, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I acted like a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. Now, my father worked for the government. We were of average income, middle class. My mother was a nurse. And Dad, and I didn't know this until years later, but when we were kids, he would buy all of his clothes secondhand. So he bought his shoes at like thrift stores or garage sales. You never would know it because he would go through the things and make sure what he
Good
got
things.
was, you know,
Yeah.
decent looking. It was never like flashy, you know, but he always wore a suit to church, always, because he wore a suit to the office and a tie all the time. And he always looked nice, but all his clothes were secondhand. So the reason was because he wanted to have us to have new clothes and new shoes, and my mother, her nursing uniforms and all that stuff. So to economize, he just bought himself secondhand clothes and secondhand things. And he later didn't become a Franciscan until later in his life. But I mean, just the witness of him doing that just the effort to do this is countercultural. The motivation behind it has to be one of charity.
Yeah.
Right? And so that, you know, in other words, I'm not, because you can even make simple things a show.
Yeah.
Like and with all due respect to the friars that used to be in Fort Wayne, those habits that they had, that they wore, and I lived with them for 6 months. So they were all tattered and they're patched all over the place. But the thing is, this cloth that they had was from Spain. It was like 10 times more expensive than our habit material. And they imported it and then they beat it up. So they abused it so that it would look old, and they would keep washing it and treating it poorly. It was wool, which you're not supposed to wash that way. And then they would put patches all over it, even places where there weren't even holes. And I felt like I was living on a movie set for 6 months because you're making a show out of it. I mean, our friars, when the old German friars, they when there was a tear in the habit, they would patch it,
it
but
up.
from the inside so that you wouldn't see it.
Right.
And they wore the habits till they were threadbare. Okay, but let's put it this way: poor people don't make a show out of being poor.
That's right, yes.
They're not trying to look poor, okay? But when you have a spirit of poverty, and that's like what my father taught us by example, that is, you're doing it out of love for your children and love for your wife. You're choosing to live simple, motivated by charity. Then it's not, because you can make anything a show.
Right.
You can make a show out of anything, even simplicity. Right?
Right.
So it really has more to do with the interior conversion and the reasons for which you're doing this, you know, out of the love of God. I mean, that was certainly why St. Francis chose a certain kind of simplicity in garb. And the fact that you're making this effort to do all this itself is a wonderful thing, because it's a countercultural thing, certainly. But, you know, and more important than even whatever we wear, you know, it has to do with the interior disposition.
Right.
You know, and so that is my living simply making me more charitable, you know, is because, you know, this is St. Thomas Aquinas. St. Thomas said that every sin is a sin against charity, right? So venial sins wound charity, mortal sins destroy charity. Sources of grace, like our prayer life, our sacramental life, are works of charity. They repair the wounds of sin. But every sin is a sin against charity. So whatever we do, whether it's in the dress or whatever we're doing, what you're trying to achieve is not a put on. You're not trying to show off to the world.
Right.
You're not trying to show off your bling, and you're also not trying to show off your simplicity either, like trying to shame other people
Right.
by dressing the way that you do. It has nothing to do with it. If it's not making us more charitable, interiorly. I mean, so pride, and St. Thomas said that pride was the first and the worst of all the sins. They're called cardinal sins because the word cardo in Latin means hinge, like on a door, right? And St. Thomas observed that when we consent to any of the 7 deadly sins, it like opens the door to all the rest of them. But he said pride is the first, and often we get confused about the sin of pride because we think it's like, well, I like feeling I'm superior to somebody else or whatever. But what St. Thomas said was he said it's an inordinate love of self which rejects subjection to God. Okay, that's pride. Pride is an offense against God's sovereignty. Then there are effects of pride, that is vainglory, hypocrisy, those kinds of those are the bad fruits of pride. But pride in of itself is rejecting God's sovereignty. And so that's all of these efforts that you're making, like to strive after this ideal is to conform us interiorly toward against all these sins which wound charity to greater and lesser degrees. And so that's why I try to say this to the friars over there in Fort Wayne, but the order has never been reformed to be more chaste. It's never been reformed to be more obedient. It always had to do with poverty. I mean, how much ink has been spilled over it, how many reform groups have started over it, and often it came down to externals, like I can have less than you, right? And then it becomes a kind of idol, like you take elements of the charism and make idols out of them, and it's not about that. I mean, what is our lifestyle, regardless of our state in life? Is it conforming us more toward virtue, and especially the highest one, which is charity? And then everything else can be put in that perspective of that. Because if you lose charity, everything else goes.
That's right.
You've got everything else is external show, And so that's why I would say this. That's why, like, even what you're doing, it's worthwhile, and it's you have to make different choices. But if you have a heart that's rooted in charity, that's rooted in the love of God, the love of others, and your priority is that. I mean, C.S. Lewis said that humility wasn't thinking less of yourself, but of thinking of yourself less.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And St. Francis said it, you hold nothing of yourself back of yourself for yourself. That's the way he said it. Hold nothing back of yourself for yourself. And that was the way St. Francis expressed that. But it's a forgetfulness of self. Essentially, that's what it is. Because any kind of external and more importantly, sin, that's what draws attention, and the wrong kind. But anyway.
Yep. No, that's right. Thank you, Father. That kind of summed it all up. Because that's what the purpose of this rule is to surrender to God, to think about Him, not yourself, to think about others, not yourself. So all of these things with the clothing and all of that is to make you not stand out so that people don't even, if you're in a crowd, they won't notice you. And then it's same with when we eat. Like, we're not supposed to rush in and take everything first, and not supposed to do anything that's going to call attention to what we're not eating. We want to not call attention to ourselves. So it's not about me, it's about God. So hopefully, the only thing people notice about you is you're wearing a cross or a crucifix or something. Might notice that you're a charitable person, you're kind, you're encouraging, you'd help somebody, you know. That's what they notice, not you, but your action and your witness. So that's what this whole rule, this rule is just to help us to do that. So, thank you. I don't know if anybody has any other questions or any other discussion. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. I don't know what time it is. It's probably close to 3, or maybe it's after.
3:30.
3:30, is it 3:30? Okay. Well,